Hi, this is the Philosophical Angle program, and I'm your host, Chris Angle. I'm the author of 4 books on philosophy, one of which is The Philosophical Equations of Economics. And the purpose of the Philosophical Angle is to examine the nature of concepts being used in current media. Along with me is my co-host and colleague, Rick Samuelson. Rick, good to see you.
Good to see you.
This week we're going to talk about the concept of wherefore the superiority of Western culture, and the application is the speech President Trump gave in Poland. And when he was there, President Trump pointed out that democracy and individual rights are facets of the superiority of Western culture, and he's right. The West became great, and I'm going to quote him, because people are allowed to chase their dreams and pursue their destinies. And secondly, President Trump emphasized the value of freedom. And consequently, the West has produced the world's most extensive culture, and thus the world's greatest culture. And so let's explore this and find out why I can say such a thing. First, culture is the production of all goods and services that a society produces. And therefore, we can say that there are 2 types of culture. There is a sociological culture or a behavior culture, and a society produces that, and the study of this would be called an ethnography. And then there's a physical culture. And an example of physical culture would be the buildings and structures that a society produces. It would be products such as cars that a culture that would produce the physical culture. And the standard that we use to measure the advancement of a culture compared to any other culture is the amount of the betterment it has given to its individual members of its society. And clearly, Western culture has far outstripped all others, having really produced the major portion of goods and services that has brought betterment to the world. And now we should now probably ask ourselves, rhetorically of course, why it is that Western society produces the most advancements, generating the most betterments in its physical cultures, such as medicine and architecture and construction of buildings and food and production and of goods and services, and a host of just all sorts of things that we produce. And for the behavioral and social culture, Western culture has produced a vast array of services such as banking, internet, informational transfer, and so much other services. And within the Western service-oriented society, its production of financial investment and other knowledge-based services is the best throughout the world. So let's ask, what attributes of Western culture allow us to produce more betterment than any other culture throughout the world, and indeed throughout all of history? Well, is the amount of respect that we produce for the individuals in our society. And the more respect that we produce for the individuals in our society, the more we will be able to produce goods and services, and the more betterment will accrue to the individuals of the society. And why is this? It is because, why does it specifically respect facilitate this? And it's because respect comes from the consideration of the importance of others with whom you want to cooperate. It has been evolutionarily important that individuals cooperate in society to be able to produce things. And evolution produced respect, which allows aggression to subside when you deal with other individuals. And especially when you the reduction of aggression and the introduction of respect allows us to cooperate. And we cooperate in order to produce goods and services. And we produce goods and services in order to bring betterment into our life and bring us up away from misery. So the attribute of respect appears in any species of life that needs to cooperate with each other in order to function and promote its own betterment. Of course, humans have evolved to be the most cooperative and thus have the greatest capacity for respect. Further, Western culture has produced an environment to induce respect amongst the individuals of its society. Thus, those societies in Western culture that have allowed respect of the individuals to proliferate are those societies that have become the wealthiest and have produced the greatest amount of betterment for the individuals. Initially, the great action of Western culture that produced respect for the individual started with the Magna Carta in 1215. And the Magna Carta protected basic human rights, life, liberty, and property, and thus generates the respect of other persons' goods and services. And private property allows the goods and services of the individual to accrue to that individual's betterment. Previous to the Magna Carta, everything was within the king's domain. After the Magna Carta, there came other great documents that allowed societies to cooperate, further allowing individuals to prosper, such as the Constitution of the United States. This document allows for private property, not just a land-owning gentry, as the Magna Carta did, but allows the common man, previously known as serfs or peasants, also to own property, to cooperate, and further his betterment. It caused government to have more respect of the individual, and thus the government, which formerly was a king or a queen, became more respectful of the individual and his private property, which includes his investments in his labor and in his production of his goods and services. Once there is established between the government, or the king and queen, and the individual, there accrues a respect that allows individuals to prosper, and an incentive begins to increase in the lives of the individuals, furthering prosperity of the society. Once these ingredients within society are established, the ingredients strive to create betterment and produce a great culture. Other societies of the world were dilatory in creating an atmosphere or environment that enables the production of cooperation to accelerate through the proliferation of respect. And any other society that tends toward the totalitarian, such as those of Islam, will not produce as much respect of the individual, and Islam produces a total disrespect of the unbelieving individuals, not of Islam, and therefore Islamic cultures cannot produce as much cooperation, and ergo the Islamic society will not produce as much knowledge, and thus it doesn't produce as many goods and services that the Western culture has, which accrues to the betterment of the individuals within our society. This is because the society of Islam produces little respect for its social individuals, but it concentrates on producing respect for the laws and regulations produced inside the Quran and the Hadith, which are the sayings of Muhammad, all consumed with the individual's relationship with the one and only God. Thus, its accentuation and emphasis is on the individual's adherence to the word of Allah as noted by the Quran and the Hadith. Therefore, the cooperation between individuals does not proliferate as well and as fast as Western culture. And the same was true for any other totalitarian society, such as that of Lenin and Stalin in the Soviet Union, or Mao in China, or Pol Pot in Cambodia, or any of those societies that are of totalitarian origin. The communist societies concentrate on the individual's relationship with the all-consuming and all-present government. And we note that the more the Islamic society adheres strictly and fundamentally to the Quran, the more it is inherently poor in its production of goods and services, unless it happens to be blessed with great natural resources. These totalitarian societies, whether communist or Islamic, never produced many goods and services nor knowledge, and they, in order to get that knowledge, they had to buy it or steal it, and which is what they did. On the other hand, Western societies, due to the Western culture, is governed by the Judeo-Christian tradition, which places no restraint on individuals between no restraint on the cooperation between individuals, as it makes a separate requirement for the individual's relationship with God. As Jesus said, render unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things which are God's. To sum up, those societies that allow for private property and the ownership of one's efforts, and allows for the will to cooperate, to proliferate to the greatest extent, will prosper to the greatest extent. Thus, the study of Western culture at centers of learning should be first and foremost the study of anything else. And so, let's ask Rick: should the study of Western culture be requisite at the universities? Should it be first and foremost in the university's priorities? Rick, what do you think?
I believe so. I believe return to a more formal, certainly initial set of studies at the college level, as it used to be a number of years ago, is urgent. If only because colleges should be in the business of producing responsible citizens, and responsible citizens require a certain basic understanding of what has made the United States in particular, and more broadly Western civilization, successful. And the subjects are complex, but the obvious ones that are absolutely essential are an understanding of the rule of law, an understanding of representative democracy as it's practiced, an understanding of the scientific method as it developed within the West, an understanding of the history of the country, and more broadly Western civilization that got us to where we are, and obviously certain of the mistakes along the way that we wouldn't want to repeat. And beyond that, a firm grasp of certain basic scientific and mathematical concepts, so that you can operate in the world we have today.
Hey, what about Far Eastern societies? They've started to produce a great amount of goods and services and production and knowledge, especially Japan, over the last 100 years. Should they be included in this?
Well, yes, because they've adopted, in many cases, the techniques developed in the West at an earlier stage. I mean, the development of their universities, the development of their research and development facilities, and that includes the universities as well as corporate entities and so forth. These mimic what was developed in the West, X number of years earlier. And so to the extent that they've learned the value of those techniques and, exploited them, and rightly so, it's no surprise that Japan and other parts of Asia are, catching up, if not surpassing, certain countries in the West, most obviously in Europe.
That's true. Japan certainly has followed Western tradition since the opening of the opening of Japan back in the 1860s by Admiral Perry. They've totally transformed their society and included many of the values that operate here within the Western society, and thus they've been able to acquire great wealth. So really, their values are the same. What about China?
Well, China is a mixed system. You have still this oligarchy at the top, which is highly politicized. However, at the level of the functioning of the economy, there is within China quite a bit of freedom to set up and fund businesses, and of course they comprise by far the largest number of students studying in the United States, and have acquired, over generations now, a vast amount of knowledge transfer, frankly, and many have taken jobs in the U.S. and then gone back to China. You find time and time again that certain of the successful Chinese companies mimic technological companies found in the United States, and that's no accident. So where they've managed to copy us, particularly in the development of technological knowledge, they've prospered.
Yeah, so that statement just made me think of Russia as there's an enigma. Where are they going to go? They should have prospered more than they have, I would think. What do you think?
Well, I think if communism had never intervened, Russia would be a far more powerful country than it is today. The natural resources are unmatched, obviously. The university system, their Moscow University is prestigious, but there isn't the, for lack of a better term, installed base of educational excellence in Russia that you would find, for example, in China. There aren't enough universities. They aren't big enough. They aren't doing enough cutting-edge work. They're doing it in selected areas. And so they really haven't joined the fray to the extent of exchanging information, scientific breakthroughs, to anywhere near the degree that Chinese, Japanese, British, German, French, American, Canadian universities have, and it's held them back.
I agree. They haven't really reached out and become cooperative with the West to the extent that free trade would be openly available, and so I think that's held them back. And it seems to be an oligarchic government that almost fascist in the sense that it controls the upper echelon of companies, and although it seems to let be the lower echelons of companies. So once it totally becomes invested in a good system of property rights and then opens up free trade, I think then it'll become a tremendously great country, and it'll up its stature in the world economy. Last thoughts?
Well, I think it's the undermining of Western culture at the university level is more insidious than it first appears. I think there is a deliberate effort to de-emphasize the importance of Western contributions and to overemphasize this kind of multicultural grab bag of beliefs and theories and what have you, and sources of literature that are representative of, you know, smaller and less consequential civilizations. And I see this with my daughter's, initial course at Whitman, which of course features Marx and nothing about Schumpeter, for example, or Adam Smith. So here you have students reading about, a failed system, a grossly failed economic system, and knowing comparatively little about the Western economy and capitalist economy that's made us so successful. And you see this pattern over and over again, where for all kinds of politically correct and identity-related, cultural identity-related reasons, the fundamental knowledge that describes the success of the West across many vectors, if you will, is being chipped away.
Okay. Rick, thanks for joining us, and we'll see everybody next week on another episode of the Philosophical Angle program.
Thank you.
Thank you.